Today on CityCast Denver. Do we really want this? This noise? The annoying vuvuzelas flooding the streets of our city? Well, I'm sorry to break it to you, but it could happen if Denver's bid to be a host city for the 2026 World Cup gets accepted. Me, Paul, and Bree are chatting soccer, plus street news. Today is Friday, November 12th, 2021. I'm Xandra McMahon, and this is CityCast Denver. Welcome back to CityCast Denver, the show where I, Xandra McMahon, give my colleagues pop quiz trivia questions about the Mile High City.
Oh, no.
Are you ready, Bree Davies?
No.
What building burned down at Lakeside Amusement Park in 1972?
The pool building that held their pool?
Yes. Good job.
Friggin' give Bree a Lakeside question. Come on.
It's also where they stored a lot of the ride pieces to the rides. And I believe that's why the one ride that's kind of like the dead ride on the property, I think it's the Starlight or something. I can't remember what it's called, but it looks like a Ferris wheel kind of. Mm-hmm. I think the cars for that, or the whatever you want to call them, were in that building, and they're that's why they don't exist anymore. But I could be wrong.
Interesting. Well,
there you go.
All right, producer Paul Karolyi, you're up next. Are you ready?
No, but okay. Let's do it.
You're a homeowner, so I'm hoping this is an easy one for you too.
Uh-huh.
In Denver, you are expected to clear your sidewalks within blank hours of a snowstorm.
Oh, we have a north-facing sidewalk on our property too, so I should know this. I think it's like 24 hours. Is it 24 hours? That's my guess.
Yes, that is correct. Ding, ding, ding. Hey, see, I'm not trying to trick you guys.
Okay.
All right. So, unfortunately, this show is not just me giving my colleagues trivia questions. We also do news and talk about the news, and that's what Friday's all about. It's the day where we try and have more fun and give some perspective on what's happening in the city. This week we have two topics. There's been a lot of news in the last few weeks about just the streets, who gets to use the streets? Is it cars? Is it bikes? How do we make the streets more accessible for Denverites? So this first topic, we're going to kind of round up all of the news in the last few weeks about streets. And I want to throw a question out to you both. Who do you think owns the streets? Because Bree, I know you drive. Paul, you like to bike. So I want each of you to make your case for who owns these streets.
Wow. I think in Denver, this is such an obvious question. This is the car. This is big car owns the streets. And I think what we have to say, the shadow looming over this whole conversation, we have to say it, is that Denver recently set a very ignominious record. We had 73 traffic deaths already this year, which is the highest since the city of Denver put in place its new Vision Zero plan, which is a goal to have zero traffic deaths by 2030. The Hancock administration put it in place in 2016. And it's just horrible. It's just a horrible thing, and it keeps happening, and it seems like it's getting worse. And I don't know. I was doing a lot of reading about this morning to try to figure out why this is happening. And it is complicated. It is a complicated issue. I don't even really know where to start with it. But, we could talk about this 5-year plan. We could talk about...
Let's start with the 5-year plan. Why do you think Vision Zero is not working? Or why is it not going according to plan? Because the numbers are obviously going in the wrong direction.
I think it needs way more resources devoted to it to actually implement it and make it work. I was just thinking about the last election we had in the bond, and part of the bond package was referred question 2C for transportation and mobility systems, $63 million for that. And that was for projects like expanding sidewalks, renovating existing bike lanes, adding new ones. And then we had this facilities bond, part of the bond, 190 million for a new building. So like our priorities are clearly even skewed. Like there's just not enough money being put towards improvements that would make our streets safer for pedestrians. And this is why we're seeing so many. I mean, there's a lot of components, like Paul was saying, to why this is so hard. But one of them to me is we just don't devote enough funding.
Yeah. I thought that that's how we were going to start. And I want to make a case here for the Hancock administration's treatment of this, because I think that they have been doing quite a bit, it seems, to work on this Vision Zero plan in the last 5 years. Like, I read the report from 5 years ago, and it's a lot of data in there. It's very data-driven analysis. They identified a lot of specific locations. Apparently, 50% of traffic deaths in Denver happen on 5% of streets. So they identified these certain streets, and now Denver's new Department of Transportation like consistently monitors those streets to look at ways they can improve signage or street like painting. And those things I think really do work. I saw Jill Locantore, the former CityCast Denver guest, also the head of the Denver Streets Partnership. She was talking about how that actually is like a very real and good way to improve the situation. Also, the Hancock administration has lowered speed limits on some of these high injury network arteries, like Evans back in 2019. They lowered speed limits on a big long stretch from 35 down to 30. I think that stuff makes a difference.
I just don't see it. I don't see the differences happening. I think about, so I'm a driver, and I'm not like proud to be a car driver. I'm not like, I mean, there's a lot of arguments for cars for sure and against cars. But I just think about as a driver, even when I'm trying to be a safe driver. So say going down, I think Federal's 40 miles an hour in some spots, right? So if you're going 40, even if you're going 50, people speed around you like you're going 2 miles an hour. And that's a regular occurrence to me. So even with the improvements in things, like I just don't see people even obeying the speed limits to a dangerous degree. Because the other thing is with Federal, along my stretch on the south part of Federal, is they've done a lot of changes to the medians that haven't necessarily been helpful for pedestrians, though they have added a couple of those pedestrian stops that are like not stoplights for cars. They're stops so that cars stop for pedestrians. And I see people drive through those all the time. Like there's no enforcement. However, as a person who's pretty much an abolitionist when it comes to police, I don't know what the solution is when it comes to enforcement. Like even if we lower the speed limits, how can we ensure that drivers are obeying those?
Well, I think that's so interesting to me, because I think that that's the argument that people who advocate for things like self-driving cars make, is you can regulate those things. You can just put limits on how fast vehicles go. Like that would take away some of our Western individualism. We wouldn't be able to choose to go 100 miles per hour out on that dusty desert highway of our imagination. But on a road like Federal, that would really help. That would fix the problem.
But I'm thinking about someone like me who has a 2005 Honda CR-V. I'm not going to get a self-driving car anytime soon. No. Like I can't afford a new car. And I think that's probably true for a lot of my neighbors, especially folks that drive trucks for work and stuff. So I love that concept, Paul, but I just don't see it being implemented in the near future in a mass way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Well, I want to go back to the speed limit thing, because some other news that came out recently was that Councilmember Paul Cashman wants to implement this citywide 20 miles per hour speed limit on residential streets. And so I'm just curious, like, Bree, again, do you feel like that is not going to make a difference at all, because you're saying like speed limits are irrelevant in Denver?
Yes. Absolutely. I love the concept, and I would like for us to do it anyway, because it's in some cases, yes, that might actually make folks slow down. I'd love to look at studies of those signs that like tell you like you're going over the speed limit. Are they really effective? There's one kind of I think on Alameda. I watch people speed through it all the time. They don't care. I also live in a neighborhood that's very car culture centric. And I'm a defender of that to a certain extent because this is a way that folks gather and commune around their cars. There's a car club that meets on my block. And they go 50 to 60 miles an hour every day, exiting our street to get onto the raceway that is Alameda. So I don't see it making a huge difference. However, it's something we could do and we should do because then maybe we could change the culture around it. If it was a citywide thing, that would be amazing.
Okay, I want to respond to that because I want to talk about culture in a minute, but reading this Vision Zero report and where these traffic deaths actually happen, I don't think these neighborhood streets are the problem.
No. I would agree with you. I totally agree. That was my other issue with it is it's like the arterials, the big streets are where the actual accidents are occurring.
Yeah, poorly lit situations, between intersections, bigger streets. Like that's where the problems are. This like neighborhood street lowering the speed limit thing, I feel like this is all driven by like NIMBY concerns, like make my neighborhood more comfortable for the way I want to use it. And it's not, I don't think it's actually going to help.
Can I push back just a little bit, Paul?
Bring it on.
I grew up in your neighborhood and we played in the street all the time. We actually had, I learned in looking at other neighborhoods as I got older that alleyways look a lot different than they do in your neighborhood. My neighborhood had an alley that ran all the way through it that was kind of like another street, but cars didn't really use it that much. We just played in it all the time. And I would say in the last few years before my mom sold her house, I watched people's speed limits go up compared to how they were in the 80s when I was a kid. And I don't know if that's just anecdotal, but it did make a difference. We played in the street safely all the time. I never had a single friend that was hit on their bike or any, never.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that because I think that's a change. I mean, maybe this is now the good time to talk about the culture aspect because that was another big point in this Vision Zero plan from 5 years ago that distracted driving. That's a huge problem. People are on their phones now. People are going too fast. They're not paying attention. They're looking down to see what next podcast they want to listen to.
I mean, or let's be honest, if we're not these people directly, we watch people's TikToks and their Instagram stories and they're clearly driving. Like this is something we couldn't have comprehended. I remember when, when cell phones were first coming into being something that the masses had, hang up and drive was a big bumper sticker that you saw everywhere. Hang up and drive. My dad actually used to have a rotary dial phone taped to the dashboard of his car as a joke to be like, but this is all we were worried about was people. It's illegal in some states for you to talk on your phone when you're driving. That's not the problem now. It's like you're saying, checking your texts, finding the next, I'm guilty of doing that, finding my next podcast to listen to, filming ourselves talking. This is beyond.
Sure.
So maybe that's what needs to be enforced.
Yeah. The other cultural aspect that I thought was interesting when I was reading up on this was the type of car also really matters. Like when there are collisions, people are more likely to die when they're hit by a car that is larger, like an SUV, which, as our friend, past guest, CPR transportation reporter Nate Miner reported on a few months ago, Coloradans are buying more than ever. Coloradans love SUVs. 86, I think, what was it, 86%? Let me check this. I want to make sure I get this right. Industry data, I'm quoting from his article, industry data shows light trucks, including SUVs, now account for 86% of new vehicle registrations in Colorado so far this year, second only to Vermont. 86% of new vehicle sales are SUVs in Colorado.
Well, and I'm just thinking of, again, my neighborhood, it's tons of massive trucks, like Ford F-150s. That's the car to have.
Yeah. As a cyclist, that's the stuff that makes me feel unsafe. Giant car whizzing past me.
Absolutely. It's terrifying, especially when you think about some people are actively aggressive towards cyclists in their cars, which is wild to me. I have to say I spent like a couple summers riding my bike everywhere. And just watching, that was the scariest part, is watching people be actively aggressive towards cyclists, which is insane.
Yeah, the enmity between different people who feel like they're on different teams here.
Yeah, we're all humans.
I think that's another problem with the culture in this place. Like when I moved here, is Megan and I, we didn't have a car, and we didn't want to buy a car, didn't want to change our lives in that way. We were used to biking everywhere. It's just not possible. Like, it's just not possible to get around without a car. And so when people are growing up, you learn to drive. That's how you get around. You don't have any empathy for different forms of transportation just because it's not available. And I'm not saying everybody should bike because it's not necessarily an accessible thing for everybody, but I think more people should try it. I was thinking about Avi Stopper in that interview I did over the summer about like just getting people on bikes would help a lot. Just getting people to try it.
Absolutely. Those couple summers I spent cycling, one thing that really helped me get into it was I have this great friend, Britt Chester, a fellow journalist, who rode his bike everywhere, and he took me out into the street and showed me how to ride in the street. Mm-hmm. He showed me how to ride with traffic. And it was so helpful because before I was like riding on the sidewalk, which you should not do. But like understanding how to sort of navigate the road as a cyclist. You can't control cars for sure. But there's certain things that you can do, and getting that comfort. I agree, Paul. Just getting more people on bikes would do a world of good.
Yeah, because when you're driving, how people are going to act.
It made me a safer driver. Same. It made me a safer driver. I was really more careful of cyclists. I try to give them as much room as I can. I definitely slow way down when I'm sharing the road with a cyclist because I'm driving a giant machine.
Yeah.
Like that's what people forget. These are like, I don't want to be the transit person who's like, they're death machines, but they're pretty big weapons if you're not careful. And you see the city so differently, Paul. I'm sure you can speak to this.
Oh my God, 100%.
Riding your bike through the city is like such an almost like magical experience. Part of it is you're getting exercise, so your blood is flowing, so you've got your energy going. The air feels different. You smell things, you see things. But like part of it is just being out in the city. You start to notice different buildings you've never seen before, or like pieces of art. I don't know. Like I love riding my bike around the city. I just don't. I'm a person that does it for fun, and Paul, you're a person that does it to get around.
Yeah, the Cherry Creek Trail. I've said it before. I'll say it again. It's pure joy. It's pure joy. It's the best thing in Denver. It's the best thing Denver has. The Cherry Creek Trail is so good.
It does sound very nice. I'm very curious about it. Well, any other final points before we move on to our second topic about who owns the streets?
I'd like to talk about the accessibility component because I think when we get into conversations about transit, there's transit advocates who are like big cyclists generally. That tends to be the type of person. And then there's disability advocacy. And they kind of don't mesh, I've found, being more on the disability side of it just based on the work that I've done and the friends, my friends and family with disabilities. We just don't communicate. And I would love to know what ways we could bring those groups together to do better advocacy, because bike lanes are cool, but like there's this thing like things in the bike lane, and I find that really alienating for folks who use wheelchairs because often they are the thing in the bike lane because there's no sidewalk. And it's not like they're like, oh, I would love to ride in the street. But you may see folks who use wheelchairs in the street. Oh, I've seen it terrifyingly on Alameda when there's snow. And this is another thing. We'll get into this when it snows. We can talk about that. But just like we have to come together a little bit better in some way. And I think that means transit advocates really opening up the conversation to be a little bit more accommodating for folks with disabilities, to say, how can we make this conversation about you as well? Because they don't want to be in the bike lane, but there's nowhere else to be. Mm. So we're all kind of sharing and I think Jill Locantori has made this point many times too. We're sharing such a small piece of the pie because cars get such a large piece of the pie. And that's not fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and our bus system's a whole other component of this that we could talk about. But
I want to talk about that because I have a good answer for your question, Xandra. Who owns the streets? The Denver Tramway Company. I was reading a little bit about this history, how Denver used to have this like pretty extensive
amazing
system of transit, these horse-driven train cars, but then later electric train cars. This was a private company that controlled this transportation network. I didn't realize that. Like, we didn't have a public transportation network because it was privatized. And then when that company went out of business in the 50s, we were left with nothing. And I don't know. I want to learn more about that how that happened and how that impacted the current terrible system we have now.
Totally. All right, well, let's move on. Second topic of the day, Denver's new World Cup bid. So the FIFA World Cup, it's decided it's coming to North America in 2026. And now the cities in the U.S. are being selected, or they're going through a bidding process. And Denver is in the running. And Denver's up against 17 cities, and only 10 cities are going to get picked. So yeah, I'm not a soccer person. Are any of you a soccer person or football?
No, but I want to say that I made assumptions about how Paul was going to land on this topic based on his love for the Olympics, and I was so wrong. So Paul, can you share your take on this World Cup bid?
I thought about this more. I'm of two minds on this.
Okay.
On the one hand, to answer your question, Xandra, yeah, I am a soccer person, but only every 4 years for the World Cup. I love it for the same reason I love the Olympics, the pageantry, the international brotherhood, the coming together. That stuff all really gets me going. It's exciting. And I think it's important to note, like, this is not the Olympics. Like, we wouldn't need to build new infrastructure for this. They would just play the games in Empower Field. Also, it wouldn't all be on Denver, the burden of hosting an event like this. Like, this would only be 6 games, so it's just 6 big sports games, and that's cool. And it's the biggest sporting event in the whole world, so it would be a lot of eyes on Denver, and I'm proud of Denver. It'd be great to show it off. That would be really exciting. But I don't want anything to do with FIFA. This is the most corrupt organization in the world. I mean, anyone that's been paying attention to how FIFA operates with no accountability, like openly taking bribes, like they're basically even talking about this in their own internal documentation around the way they awarded the bid to Russia in 2018 and the host bid to Qatar in 2022. A terrible place to play soccer games in the summer. We're looking at temperatures of like 110, 120 degrees next summer. And these soccer players are supposed to go out there and perform at like top level. It's insane. It's an insane idea. The only explanation for why that would happen is massive, massive bribes. And that's just like part of what FIFA is. So no, I don't want those people anywhere near this city. I'd love to watch the games, but ugh.
And I think city officials or Denverite reported that it would cost around like $55 million to host these 6 games. So again, it's not like a ton of money that we're investing, and like the returns would be apparently huge and much greater than that.
But that's like the booster's job to say that too.
Oh yeah.
Like,
sure.
Let's make a point. Like, I know it's only 55 million, but if we're going to spend 55 million for 6 games, I don't know. We can't make any promises. I mean, look at what happened with the Tokyo Olympics. Mm-hmm. There was none of that economic boost for the surrounding businesses and people because everybody was under quarantine. Who knows?
Yeah, it's really unpredictable. It's a risk.
My issue is, I mean, obviously beyond FIFA being totally corrupt, I don't like what our city tends to do when we attract big events, which is generally to try to hide our homeless population. So I would be concerned that our houseless neighbors would see extreme aggression towards them at the behest of the city, as they're doing right now with sweeps, but it would be, up 10 notches from that. And I don't want to see that. The only other thing I could think that might be a bonus is if street vendors and other people who sort of operate in the alternative economies, busking and things like that, were able to freely do their work, then I would be like, okay, maybe. Because, pedicab drivers, people that make and sell burritos, musicians that busk, these kinds of events are actually pretty lucrative for them if they're able to do their jobs unbothered.
I mean, to say nothing of the small businesses and the, restaurants and stuff that are in the area of the stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. And I live I live 5 minutes from the stadium. Mm. So I'd be curious to see if those things were able to operate as usual, then it might be a good thing. But I'm with you, Paul. I think we don't really need to have anything to do with FIFA.
It would be nice to like get the excitement around soccer in the city a little bit more. I think that's just a fun culture to be a part of. It's different.
Well, it's an international game, so you see people from all over the world like coming together to cheer each other. As to where like I feel like there's almost like a separation here. Like if you're a Wisconsin fan or whatever, you go to a Wisconsin bar to watch a game, or you go to, you know what I mean? But like I used to work above the Irish Snug, and they played World Cup games, and it was like actually the most fun time to be at the bar. Because it was like people from all over watching games all day, because the games, you know what I mean? Like the time differences. It was so much fun. So I feel you, Paul. I think that could be a cool thing too.
Yeah. Xandra, would you want to go get a ticket, go see one? If they game?
I don't know. When's the next Women's World Cup? That's all I care about.
2023.
The U.S. The U.S. women's national team is like literally the only aspect of soccer that I follow, because they're amazing.
I was going to say, they're pretty badass.
Yeah, this is a conversation that has been had, so I won't rehash it, but they should be getting way more attention than the men's teams, and obviously getting paid equitably. But anyways, FIFA, yikes.
Just the lack of accountability. If anyone wants to read about any of that, by the way, there's a great website that's been leaking internal documents from these like major sports governing bodies for a few years called Football Leaks. Maybe we could drop a link to this article from the New Yorker profiling the organization into the show notes, because just like spend some time on here, get upset. You know, this is rage fuel. Enjoy.
I will say, in the Denverite article, it did say that the bids that are happening this time around, after all the corruption was exposed, like human rights organizations are involved. Like there's just like a lot of changes, quote unquote, that have been put in place to make sure that FIFA behaves and this is like done fairly. But who knows?
It's such a Denver thing to go after something like this after it's exposed for being this total nightmare, corrupt organization. Denver's like, hey.
We're like, now
how's
we
it
might
going?
have a chance.
Yeah, sounds like our kind of bag, so bring it on over. Like,
maybe we should have put that on the bond, like how a big bribe for FIFA.
A big bribe.
We should vote on the size of the bribe.
Yes, everyone pitch in. All right. Well, this was fun. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Xandra.
Yeah, thanks, Xandra. Thanks, Paul.
Of course. Thanks, Bree.
Hey, thanks to the listeners.
Thanks,
listeners.
Thanks, you guys. Yeah, I just want to say to you, you all have left us some really nice reviews on Apple Podcasts, and we do read every single one of them. And sometimes they make me cry, but sometimes they make me feel so good, and we just appreciate you so much. So thanks for listening.
And if you're new to the show, welcome. Stick with us. We'll be back on Monday. Expect this kind of conversation every Friday. And that's all for today here on CityCast Denver. Our producers this week were Paul Karolyi and me, Xandra McMahon. Peyton Garcia writes our morning newsletter. Our host is Bree Davies. And our music is by Los Mochetes, with additional mixing by Tyler Lindgren, plus more from the Epidemic Sound Library. If you haven't already, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at CityCast Denver. And leave us a review, like Bree was talking about, on Apple Podcasts. You can sign up for our daily newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. And we'll be back on Monday. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone. Put some oil on that chain and some air in those tires. Take your bike out this weekend.
Oh, yeah, it'll still be kind of nice.
Yeah.
Perfect fall time for a bike ride.
See y'all on the Cherry Creek Trail.
Live from Xandra's closet.
It's Friday morning.